Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning, my reading comes from two different parables, one of which is printed in the bulletin, the other I will be reading from up here. Okay, so the parable of the weeds. Jesus told another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot some of the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it to my barn." Our second parable is what defiles a person. And he called the people to him and said, "Hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles a person." Then the disciples came and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?" He answered, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit." But Peter said to him, "Explain the parable to us." And he said, "Are you also still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of this heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone." So good and bad, right and wrong. These are all common ways people define others or even themselves. In selecting my passages for this morning, I found the parable of the wheat and the weeds. And in this parable, there is a sower who is tasked with filling a field with seeds of wheat. He sows the seeds in the field, and later that night, while he was sleeping, an enemy entered the field and sowed seeds of weeds in the same soil as the wheat. Any gardener would know that weeds are bad and that wheat is good. Instinctively, gardeners would tell you to pull the weeds up. However, when asked if the weeds should try to be identified and disposed of, the sower responded and said that the wheat and weeds should remain together until the time of the harvest. A key thing for me in this passage is that it's the who that determines the wheat and the weeds. The weeds in the passage look identical to the crop. They have the same sprouts, same initial seeds. For all intents and purposes, they appear identical. It is not until later, during the harvest, that you can tell the wheat from the weeds, or the good from the bad. For it is not the sower or the servants that ultimately determine the wheat from the weeds, but it is the heart of man. And we are called to be the wheat, not focus on the weeds that look and pretend to be us, not focus on the weeds that will take up our soil and drain our sunlight. We are asked to leave the judgment to another power and be the wheat. This also reminds me of another parable where Jesus makes it very clear that it is not what goes into the mouth that defines us, but rather what comes out of it. It is not the type of food that comes into our body, for that hits the stomach and leaves us, but rather what radicates our heart and comes out that truly matters. Whatever we put in our mouth will come out after digestion. Whatever comes out of our mouth can remain in society and leave a lasting impact on someone. If the sower was to just say, "dispose of the weeds," then the bad seeds would not have even had a chance at life to become better. Then the bad seeds However, by saying keep them together until the harvest, the bad seeds were given a chance. They were shown compassion and mercy. And it just shows that it's not what we eat that defines us, but how we act and what we say that defines what we do and who we are. Ultimately, if the weeds chose to be weeds, that is not on us. That is not our problem. We are asked to be the wheat and be kind, to radiate God's love and light from within so that all will want to be the wheat, not judgment. We want to be kind. We want to show love. Now, how many people here live that on the daily? How many people are always kind, always strive to do their best, every moment of every day? Very slim chance. Because this is a very hard message to live. And especially for me, it is a hard message to live. Because as most of you know, there are a few things that define me. Cerebral palsy, cross country, school, church, and now work. Yes, I recently got into the workforce. These are several aspects of my life. What most of you may know is that I run cross country with the CP, so those two things are combined. There are good days, there are bad days. Cross country is always argued to be harder than any other sport because it is both a mental and a physical game. And speaking as a person running with cerebral palsy, weakening my entire right side and tensing up on those cold days, it is mostly a mental game. So over the summer, like I said, I got my first job. One of my coworkers, who's a family friend, she also happened to run on the same cross-country team 2 years before. Now, entering this current season, my mental game had already begun, because during the summer, I was already thinking down on myself. Entering the season, no matter what, the mental game had already begun. I was already thinking down on myself. Through multiple talks with my coworker, Lauren, and two of my XC captains, Anna and Ella, I realized that no matter what, whether I was the wheat with a goal or a weed with no goal, I was out there at practice every day, towing the line at the races, cheering on my teammates. I was a member of NUMC. I was a member of this church, living and breathing the tagline, radiating God's love. I was the wheat. Now, as I depart today, I encourage all of you to reach beyond these walls and be the wheat.
Amen.